All right, there's that. Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
Yep. Yes.
Perfect. Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our August division meeting. Hopefully everyone made it out okay without having lost too much power or too much property damage from the recent storm. I know over here in West Hartford we're a little lucky that I'm actually literally an enclave of power within the sea of no power. But I know a lot of people aren't able to make it today because they don't have power. So my condolences if there's any major issues or major damages from the storm that happened to you. Hopefully you can get those resolved quickly and then get back to doing what you enjoy, which is railroading. All right. So a couple announcements. Start off with a sad note. Unfortunately, the regional convention for 2020 up in Lowell, Mass, Mill City, has been postponed to 2021. The hub division wasn't able to secure the numbers but also more importantly, they weren't able to get all the clinicians to be able to attend in order to have a full convention. So they decided to postpone it to 2021. But in its place, we are going to be doing a virtual convention. Right now, the tentative date is slated for the first week of December, which is that week right after Thanksgiving. The December 1st to the 4th. It's only going to be an evening thing from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. tentatively. We may slide that back an hour or two or slide it forward an hour or two. All the details are still being worked out, as well as the venue and the means and et cetera, et cetera. But right now the plan is still have the layout tours, clinics from all around the regions. Same thing with the layout tours all throughout the region, and we're trying to work on a contest of some sort, whether it's people submitting photos of the models or videos of the models. Again, the details are still being worked on right now. Other announcements, as you can kind of tell from this little sad face here, it's not going to be looking pretty. Next weekend, the Concord Model Railroad Club in Concord, New Hampshire was supposed to have a train show, but I'm having mixed answers whether or not it's still on or if it's actually canceled. Nick, I don't know if you've heard anything at your end being a little closer.
No, nothing about that.
Okay. All right. Next, the Greenwich train show down in Old Greenwich here, that is officially closed permanently. This was hosted by Ron's Books, at the old Civic Center down in Old Greenwich. Unfortunately, they decided to stop running the show because the cost of renting the venue was starting to well exceed the profits that they were able to make. So they decided to permanently cancel the show. So that's no longer there. All right, a couple of other things. September, the NMRA X team is planning to hold an event. The details haven't been released yet, but this is kind of a sneak preview. If you want to kind of keep on top of it, best thing to do is to visit the NMRA Facebook page, as well as check in. Make sure you subscribe to their email newsletter blast, because all the information will be posted there. But there will be a September NMRA X event. I believe it's supposed to be on the weekend too. So, all right. Next on the hit parade, Train Fest. That's November 14th and the 15th, which unfortunately that's also on hold. It's been postponed, but they're also looking to do into a virtual event on the same time. Right now, they're still in the planning stages, so go to trainfest.com for more updates and details. We can also subscribe to their email blast that will help with will keep you up to date as to what's going on. Cheshire Train Show at Cheshire in Connecticut. This is held by the Cheshire High School Band Parents Association. Right now, I haven't heard anything new, but so as far as I'm concerned, it's still on. Although that may change as we get closer. I think it's going to be closely tied to how the school year is going to start, whether or not they're going to be going back or doing remote learning. So we'll keep you posted. Probably we'll have more update in our October meeting. And then the last event that I have known is the Hub Train Show up in Marlborough, Mass., the Model Railroad Expo. That has been postponed again for the same reasons as the regional convention in October. So that's been postponed and canceled for this year. But in good news, as far as the recording today, which is October 8th, the Springfield Train Show, the Amherst Society Railroad Hobby Show, that's still happening, and it's still going ahead, full steam ahead. So advanced ticket sales are actually available right now. If the show does cancel, I believe you can get a refund, but best place to find out is to go to railroadhobbyshow.com and check out the webpage there. John will have the latest. John Sacerdoti, the show director, will have the latest information there. But to reiterate, the show is on. We are still go for the Amherst show next year in January 2021. Okay, a couple new good opportunities. With COVID, we quickly learned that we had to create a new position to be able to stay in touch with one another. However, that is requiring a lot of effort and coordination. So I would like to actually create this new position who would be the person in charge of handling a lot of our social media and our YouTube channel, as well as running the hosts as for this, and then do some of the post-processing afterwards and get it to post it onto our YouTube channel, as well as kind of be fun and spontaneous and post other things of interest, railroad related, obviously, onto our Facebook page, and just but also to work the membership to kind of get ideas what would they like to see would help to be get all of our members connected, or maybe we could do some sort of like a monthly hangout type of thing. The sky is open for anybody who's interested. If this is something that perks your interest, please email me at nutmegdiv@gmail.com. I should put the email address here, but actually, you know what? Let me quickly do that. We can div at div NMRA at gmail.com. Okay. Copy that. And then the same thing going for our clinics coordinator. Okay, here we go. Yep, the same thing. Currently, this position is held out by Jim. Jim, I want to thank you for everything you've done so far. Sad to see you head out. but I do appreciate all the effort you've put into and whatnot. Would you mind just taking like a quick 2 minutes to just kind of go over position, what you do? I know we have a lot of text here, but I think it would be very beneficial if you could say a couple words.
After I unmute. Just
minor detail.
Yeah, just a small detail. Essentially, the position of clinic chairperson, manager, whatever you want to call it, is you're tasked with coming up with some unique, hopefully unique clinics, 2 clinics for every meeting cycle. And as you said, the meetings are bi-monthly, twice monthly, bi-monthly. So trying to keep the variety up, I do have a list of individuals that have given clinics in the past, but you don't want to have, the situation where things are stale. So you don't want to be tapping people who are willing to do it. And we have people that are willing to do it, but you want to keep some variety and some and some unique new clinics. So the challenge is finding those individuals that are willing to, speak in front of a live audience when we're over at Wethersfield, for instance, at the police station, and sometime maybe even more intimidating or less, depending on your outlook on how you do things in terms of giving presentations, doing it this way, where you're actually doing it virtual. So there are a lot of people out there that have a lot of wealth of information, but they're a little hesitant about getting up and speaking in front of people. So that's probably the biggest challenge, trying to find people that are willing to actually impart their knowledge through some form of presentation, whether it be this media or actually standing up in front of a group of people there at Wethersfield or wherever. So the challenge for me was trying to find those individuals, and I was not as successful as I would have liked to have been. But as I said, I do have a list, in a little database that I put together of all the various individuals who have given clinics, what their clinics were, when they gave them, and that goes back probably 2.5 years or something like that. I gleaned most of that information from the announcements that Ron puts out for each one of the meetings, so I was able to get an idea of who presented and when. So that in a nutshell is the scope of the position. Now, Kaylee mentioned the fact that that Amherst is on for this year, and as I'm part of the museum, Canton Historical Museum Board of Directors, and John Sackercody just hit us up with another reminder email that we have to get our contract. Even though we're a nonprofit, we still have to sign up for it, and he's very much into let's get this thing going. And that was a place where I found a couple people for this year. When this past January, Tom Lawrenson, who was on the last meeting for the Connecticut Trolley, I engaged him up there at the show, and we had a nice conversation. And he said, "Yeah, no problem." So it's a matter of digging up and mining those little nuggets like that in order to get people to come to the meetings and present, or to do it this way. So that in a nutshell is what the deal is.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, so I think it's best summed up. It's really just reaching out to people, talking with people, networking with people, and trying to get ideas or presenters to come to our meeting and present. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so if this is something that really interests you, feel free to send me an email and let me know that this isn't interesting. Now, it's worthwhile it's worth mentioning that both positions, both the clinics coordination lead as well as the virtual media lead, both positions can earn you points for your volunteering AP certificate. So if you're interested in doing MMR or you're trying to get an MMR certification, volunteering is one of the categories that you can go after. So if you volunteer for either one of these roles, that counts towards that volunteering AP certificate. Okay. I'm going to open it up to the floor for any other announcements at this time. Okay.
We can't hear you, Ron.
We have a...
Ron's waving. Can't hear you.
We lost Ron's audio. Okay, well, when Ron gets audio back, we can give him the floor. Okay, so as far as clinics for today, we have Nick Santo, who's going to give a basic thought of the decoder installation. We were supposed to have Randy. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it due to him not having internet at his place due to the storm. So his presentation actually is recorded. We'll tack it on. We'll share the link so you can view the presentation, and then we'll also work on trying to get it tacked on to the end of this recording and when we post it onto our YouTube. Hey, Ron, we got you back.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me try to pull it back up. According to Ron Norrett of the Hub Division, the Hub module participation in all normally scheduled railroad shows are canceled up to and including Amherst Railroad Show. So they will not be at the show.
All right. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Which is unfortunate because they were one of the larger layouts of the show. Yeah, I think John had said there was only 400 something, low 400 contracts that have been submitted so far. So it is going to be a smaller show this year, but in general, the show will still continue. So thanks for that piece of information, Ron. Okay, so as Jim had mentioned before, we're always looking for new clinics and layouts. And so if you have any thoughts, feel free to send them my way, and we'll work on trying to get them come on board for the next meeting. A new segment that I would like to introduce is what I'm going to call Quick Fight, or What's on Your Workbench. The idea is to kind of just showcase what you've been working on, what projects that's been going on, whatever project that brings you you're most proud of and you want to show off with. So the idea is to just kind of do like a quick 5-minute little presentation. It could be a PowerPoint. It could just literally you showing the model off and just talking about it. The idea is low key. It's not meant to be a very highly intensive whole kit and caboodle slideshow, that type of thing. It's just if you want to do a slideshow, that's fine. If you want to just talk about it, that's fine. And whatnot. For me, what little project I'm working on is this little guy, this GT7 in the center of the screen here. Some people may recognize the road name, Allegheny Lackawanna Southern. It is Lionel Strang's locomotive from his railroad when he was involved with Model Railroader. He actually sent it to me because he wanted the decoder to be upgraded. It actually contained an old Wangro decoder. This is way before even Wangro became NCE. So it was ancient, and JMRI was struggling to kind of understand it. So that's undergoing the rework. But then also, he told me for one of them to go nuts with it. So I'm actually going to be completely rebuilding the front end and adding a whole bunch of details into this model, including operating walkway lights and step lights that's provided by our very own Nick Santos. So I'm sure he's going to talk more about it, but if you get a chance, do go to his website. He is the maker of the Decoder Buddy, as well as the walkway lights. So his website is Nix Trains, NIXTRAINZ.com. Okay, so with that, I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Nick. Jim, I don't know if you have any introduction you want to give for Nick, or do you want us to go straight into Nick?
Yes, Nick did provide, if I can get this going here. Yeah, as an introduction, I think all of us know Nick, but Nick was born in Bennington, Vermont on Depot Street and had his first train set by the age of 5. Trains, big and small, have been a favorite part of Nick's life and included train sets, model railroads, a brief stint as a student conductor and student engineer, now in retirement, both a Vermont Railway modeler and producer of parts for model railroad locomotives. So with that, Nick, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jim and Kaylee. Good morning. I'd like to be sure that I could share again still, and then we'll be on the road.
Okay, the ball should be going your way.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, cross your fingers. Here we go. Oh, I've got a big picture of Ron. Ron. Let's see. How's that? Can you see that now?
We see your splash screen, or splash slide.
You can see the slide.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Away we go.
Can you mute?
All set?
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, okay, very good.
Yeah, look at that. It's working. Amazing. Okay, good morning. What I want to do this morning is, aside for say hello and offer my condolences for people that don't have power yet. I have a nephew in Ware, Mass, who's probably just got power back yesterday. That was a pretty tough storm. We all got a little bit of rain up here, and that's about it. Any questions that you people have? Kaylee gave you the website. If you Google Decoder Buddy, then pretty much takes people to my website, and my contact information is there also. So any questions that you have, I'm sorry I can't answer them directly, can be asked or can be answered over the website. I'm usually around, so don't be afraid to come in and say hello. What I'd like to do this morning is alleviate some of the trepidations and fears of people who are going to do decoder installations. It's more of a thinking about seminar. I'm not going to touch locomotives with a soldering iron today. There are a lot of good places to go on YouTube for that information. One person that I've been working with closely, Larry Linger, and he's solo contracting. That's solo contracting on YouTube. He's done a lot of videos. He's very good. He's very methodical. His instruction is excellent. If you have thoughts or wonders about how to solder, his technique for soldering is very good. And although his installations are real time, which is great, nothing's been edited out. The tough parts, if he gets himself into a little bit of a corner, he'll explain how he gets himself out of that corner. He's just a very good resource. I think intimidation happens to all of us. I was very intimidated. I did my first Atlas engine with an NCE decoder and no sound, because no sound was available at that time. And it took a while. I wasn't bad with a soldering iron, but to take one of my nice custom painted locomotives, custom built up locomotives, and tear it apart and put wires in it and solder in it was a large step for me, and I'm sure it's a large step for a lot of you guys. What I found was that if the light didn't work, then it was fixable, or if it went off like a firecracker, I had too many volts or too many amps going to it, so I had to get out the soldering iron and just replace it. A lot of what you do is fixable. It's a lot like working with your computer sometimes. Not that I've ever been frustrated with a computer before, but that's where I'd like to go to today. Just to get you the new people who are new to decoder installations, thinking about it and on the road. DCC basics. What DCC systems are new? Back when at 5, when my grandfather made the first figure 8, all I had to do is worry about turning the transformer on and making it go forward, and then there's the switch to make it go backwards, and that's all there was. Eventually I got a big Lionel throttle with 2 throttles, and we had to separate out the two railroads on the one 4 by 10 foot piece of plywood, and each one would go, and the two locomotives were on the same inner layout, then they'd run at the same time. So when DCC came along from the initial DC operations, it was really quite nice. You can run a couple locomotives at the same time, and started to get control of lights, and that was really a nice breakthrough. The difference between DC is DC, which actually still goes to and makes the motor go back and forth. It's massaged a little bit by electronics, but still the same basic motor control. But DCC is kind of an AC signal. It carries track power and signal at the same time, and it has a decoder inside, which is a small board, and that changes the power to a usable power, and the decoder uses signal to control functions. There are three general types of functions, which is motor control, and now sound control, and light control. And then there are miscellaneous controls also. Let's think about the motor functions for a second. Motors are made for direct current. We mentioned that before. Two wires are connected to the motor. The wires that come from the motor have a 50% chance of being color-coded, the same way from any particular manufacturer, any particular day, and dependent upon what the weather is. So when you're hitching those two motors to the, or two wires to the decoder from the motor, you might have to change them because you got about a 50% chance that the locomotive will go in the direction that you want it the first time. The wires that come from the motor might be the same color. They might be red and black, and they might be orange and gray, and they might both be black, or they might both be red. So probably shouldn't trust the wires for direction. Motor isolation is critical. We'll get into that, and I'll show you some pictures of motor isolation. Essentially, the DCC power that's coming in to the decoder is strong, and if it gets into the decoder, it will, or the motor, and through the motor to the decoder, it'll burn up your decoder. So you have to isolate all the DCC electronics from the track power. Sound. Speakers translate energy to sound. That's fairly straightforward. Speakers are electrically polar, so that if you're connecting them in series, they work like resistors. If you're connecting them in parallel, they work like resistors. If you're connecting them in series, it's minus side to the source, plus side to the source side of the next speaker, and if you're doing 3, then it's exit side to the source side of the third speaker. So it's important to keep the polarity correct in speakers. If they're reversed, then the noise cancels itself out and you can't hear them well. If you connect speakers in parallel, then it's all on the plus side or the source side, from the source to the source side of each speaker that you're connecting, to the exit side or to the ground side, and back into the source of the power. So if you're thinking about speakers, series and parallel is important, and the polarity of the speakers is important. There are usually only 2 wires per speaker, and if you've got 1 speaker and 1 decoder, it really doesn't make any difference which way you connect those. Whether it's plus side to source and red wire to one side, it doesn't make any difference. It's only when you're connecting 2 or more speakers together that the polarity comes into play. There are a couple types of lights. Bulbs or lamps were popular for a long time. They're replacement bulbs and lamps. They're not polar. Last week I had a kind of a long week in terms of pushing or trying to convince people that bulbs aren't really the greatest way to go right now with LEDs on the market. They are much more reliable and easier to install after you understand LEDs. LEDs are polar, so if you happen to install an LED and it's backwards, chances are, if you've got the right resistance on it, that nothing will happen to it. You just change the leads, just like the motor leads. Change them around, and there's a good chance it'll work. Both LEDs and bulbs require a certain amount of current to light. Both LEDs and bulbs will fail if too much current is applied to them. You make good firecrackers. They'll light once, but you can't get them to go a second time. You're responsible for the well-being by knowing the amount of current they're happy with. We'll get back to a little bit more on LEDs later on. The miscellaneous parts are two-wire stay-alives, and stay-alives store power for times when your locomotive doesn't have electricity coming from the track. Frogs are a good example, or dirty track is a good example. Power packs have a third wire that control the power so that ESU decoders can be programmed safely. There's two different types of stay-alives. They're essentially capacitors, and most locomotive or decoder manufacturers have two-wire stay-alives. ESU is a little bit different. They have a third wire that turns the stay-alive on and off, and it will. It's really quite important to use that. There's thoughts either way in the forums that, oh yeah, I can use just a two-wire stay-alive on ESU decoders, and you can, but and that's a fairly long but, and I'm going to leave that to you to research and go into. Enough said. It breaks down into ESU and then the rest of the group for ESU for three-wire stay-alives, and the rest of the manufacturers for two-wire stay-alives. Smoke generators and servos. Smoke generators on steam locomotives, and I've seen them on diesel locomotives, and they're really impressive. Would be a miscellaneous accessory or auxiliary port, and servos. Maybe doors opening on a car, or in an engine, or I can't think of another servo other than maybe a pantograph that's going up and down. Would be a good example of a servo. On decoders, you have function outputs. There are two main types of decoder outputs. The power generally is brought to 12, 13, 14 volts to power lights and whatever. And then some decoders have what they call logic outputs, and the logic output goes out at 5 volts. What I've done myself, I got a little bit frustrated and took the 5 volts on a decoder buddy, and I've made all the outputs 12 volts consistently, and put resistors on so that they're all ready for LEDs. It makes that part transparent. Other voltages may be available on various decoders directly or by switching. I think some of the older and maybe some current Soundtrax decoders, and there could be other ones available that will offer 1.5 volts for bulbs in locomotives. Here we have a general locomotive block diagram. What am I trying to say here? I don't know whether I make a cursor show up for you people or not. This is one track, and this is another track. This is the locomotive, and one wire comes from one track, and one on one end of the locomotive, one truck, and in most locomotives, a wire from this track comes from the other truck. From the other track, from right side and left side, if you want to call it that, that's just a convention. Will have an associated pair of wires, and then the motor has 2 wires. So that's just a general stripped down version of what you're kind of looking for when you take the shell off and start pulling off the decoder that's on it, or if there's no decoder on the locomotive at all, if it's just 2 wires. If it's a DC locomotive, you might have 2 wires coming up, or 4 wires coming up, or 3 wires coming up from the track. Or the old Atherns used to do it with metal bars to get over to the top of the motor and tie in the leads for DC, and then have two bulbs, one on either side of the locomotive, that bumped into the wire, and it all evolved from there. So essentially, what you're looking for when you get all the ancillary electronics taken out of a locomotive, so for a conversion or an upgrade, is 4 track wires and 2 motor wires. Here we can see this is the series of Atlas locomotives. It starts with the closest one was the initial dual mode decoder, and you can see the 2 wires from the rear truck, the 2 wires from the front truck, and then the motor wires. This is the QSI version. The QSI version was one of the first ones that I got with speakers, and the decoder fit in here. Here are the 2 wires from the front trucks, 2 wires from the rear trucks, a couple wires off the speaker that I didn't take off, a red one and a black one. It doesn't make any difference which one that connects to, and a red-black motor wire. And the motor wires will make a difference depending upon how you hitch them to the decoder. If you hitch them one way, the locomotive might go to the right. If you hitch them the other way, the locomotive might go to the left with your throttle in hand, still pointing both to the forward direction. This is one of the last offerings from the top one. Is one of the last offerings from Atlas. You can see where the speaker goes on the right hand side, and that one has red and black track wires. On the left side of that locomotive, you can see the black and red track wires, and then the 2 motor wires coming up in the middle. That is essentially all there is to it. I'd call those pretty well stripped down. To get a decoder into these, a regular decoder, a PNP or a plug-and-play type decoder, is going to be too long for this locomotive. This piece is going to get in the way, so you can cut that off, or if you want to leave it on. Once again, the decoder body fits in there very nicely. This was the frustration model for me. This is a proto unit with the initial DC board in it, and this has a decoder buddy in it. Essentially, it'll take a 21-pin decoder. It's all stripped out. You can see the black wires have been connected on either side for the trucks. I imagine that the wires from the motor have been soldered in. You can see where they've been soldered there, and these are bulb lights. And I want to get into why not bulbs, why we should go over to LEDs, even in the model, even in the locomotive like this. This is a Proto 1000 RSD2. It was a tight installation, but it was a nice installation. Worked very well. You can see the black wire from the front, black wire from the rear. The 2 motor wires have been soldered in the black and red wire from the front trucks. And the only thing it's missing is a decoder, and then if you wanted to go out to lights, this board connects to all the lighting in the shell. This is a Vermont Railway locomotive of my own that I just started. This is very typical of the Athearn series. This was a yellow box Athearn. You've heard of blue box Athearns, and a lot of the electricity from this locomotive is carried by metal pieces. What I'm going to do is just for an example, show you this one torn apart so that it can be set into a condition where any decoder can be put into it. We talked about motor isolation, and that's very critical. I haven't put up the slide yet, but I got one of my decoder buddies back, and one of the traces was curled up, and all it looked like somebody put a soldering iron to it. But in fact, I think what happened was somebody didn't isolate the motor. This is a piece of probably phosphor bronze, and you can either push these two ears down or cut them off. What these two ears do is up in the tank area. If you can see, I hope you can see this cursor, but in the tank area there's a light gray area where those two ears push down onto the frame, and that's the other side of the DC circuit being made. On one side of these, it holds down the brush and the spring. So what you're going to want to do is take this phosphor bronze piece off and get it set so that you can work on the ears. This spring is the one that goes where all the rest of the springs go very easily, that you can't ever find again. So be really careful when you pop that off. It's just a spring clip. It hitches under here, but be well aware of that spring getting ready to leave the universe.
Yes, ask me how I know.
So that's the way I finish it up. I just cut it off, and then the next thing I'll do is I haven't got a picture of it where I've soldered. I'll just solder a piece of solder. Do a little bit of soldering on this end. Solder a wire on so that it's available for one side of the locomotive. There's an analogous piece on the top side of the locomotive without the ears that I'll solder to also. I went onto the forum a couple weeks ago, and this was the way I was taught to take care of an Athearn locomotive. I drilled and tapped a steel screw in, because this is Zymac. What the interior of the or what the frame of the locomotive is made of. This screw, it was a lot easier to screw to, so by just screwing it down into the drill and tapping and screwing it into the Zymac, it gave me a good place to solder to. So I can solder here for left track, and I can solder onto this piece of, I imagine it's steel, for the right track lead that'll go into the locomotive. There's an analogous right track lead on the right side. What I hadn't realized and on this locomotive, and where I got into trouble, was that the wheels are cindered metal, and Northwest Line made nickel silver plated wheels for these that work really well. And I had some that had been sitting in a drawer for about 30 years. So after I got into trouble, showing off the nice job I'd done at soldering it this way, I got talked into using those nickel silver Northwest Shortline wheels, and actually I hope it performs very well. It gave me a side of this truck. I've had to disassemble the truck, and I've done that before. It's not a big deal. And solder to the left side of the truck, and I just left these wires on the right side of the truck. You can see the motor has been disassembled, and the two clips have motor wires soldered to them, and that's it. You're into 5 wires on this one, or 6 wires after if you decide to upgrade the wheels on your trucks. This is a new Athearn Genesis with a new motor, and it's the way it came in from the factory. I happen to choose Loc Sound. This happens to be a Soundtrax decoder, and I wanted to keep all my decoders the same. They don't really work nicely together. It's too bad, but they don't. Each manufacturer certainly has their own strong points and functions or functionality that works better than another manufacturer, and they all have their good points, and they all have some tough points too. I happened on Loc Sound, and so this Soundtrax decoder is coming out. So what it looks like is this after I finished. You've got all the wires of the locomotive coming out of the shell that have been detached. Back to the same old 6 wires. 2 front trucks, 2 rear trucks, motor wires, and on this one the speaker's still in, a pair of speaker wires. So it no matter how old or how new the locomotive, you can generally break it down into its basic parts pretty easily. This is installation in Overland brass that the picture was sent to me by Alec Herman, and the third wire. What I saw was the 3rd wire, and where's that going? There was no when I made the decoder buddy. There was no provision for that, and what he showed me is that you can on the board below where the pins go up through, right on that number one connector pin, you can attach the white wire. It's very easy. I've got a video on my Facebook page, Nick's Trains, that'll show you how to do that. It's a lot easier doing it this way than trying to find a spot on a decoder where you can put where you can solder a line, and a lot cheaper if you mess up the motherboard as opposed to the decoder. But you can see that's a fairly nice, neat installation. Again, 2 wires from the front, 2 wires from the rear, and the motor wires are attached up here. Probably from, you can see one starting to take off, I think, from there. So let's think about a general block diagram for a motor. You've got 2 tracks with power coming in, the DCC power, the decoder, which is going to decipher the power and put DC power to the motor, put DC power to the speaker, and then you have lights. That should be a darker blue, but I'd lose it. That's your blue wire. The blue wire is generally positive and common in decoders. The colored wire, if you've done one, you're familiar with the white wire and the yellow wire. The white wire usually goes to the out to the front lights and then back into the decoder and to ground. The yellow wire goes to the rear headlights and then back to the decoder to ground. And the red and green ones, and they're purple. Well, I guess that one's supposed to be purple. Are maybe your ditch lights on either end or any of the other accessories. And the wires, I think the NMRA coding, Kaylee will set me straight because she's done a lot of these. The coding ends at green, and then you're on your own. You got to find wire colors for the rest of them. All the way out to 12 now. A lot of eight function decoders and a few 12 wire decoders for lighting functions. Now what we're going to want to do is connect the dots or connect the soldering pads. Soldering is, I feel, the best conventional method. It's permanent. It's durable, and it works very well. The second best, and a very close second, is gold-to-gold connectors. They're very reliable, and we could even see in the Athearn blue boxes that brass to Zymac was fairly reliable. It worked out quite well. When you're doing an installation, neatness is very important. The neater your installation, the better chances you're going to have of having a successful installation. Keeping track wires away from the drive shafts of the locomotives is very important. Keeping the motor wires away and insulated from the frame is very important. And just as neat as possible in all the wires that are coming from the lights. You saw all the wires in the Athearn Genesis SD70 Ace that were sitting around in the shell. That they can all be neatened up very easily. There's a lot of YouTube that can be used to get some ideas on how to do that. You can use unshrunk heat shrink tubing. I happen to like using Walther's glue. Is quick. Rubber cement is fairly quick and is reversible. On some wires, I'll go to super glue or cyanoacrylate to tack a wire down, just to route it and keep it out of the way from rubbing against the chassis or the motor or any other parts as the shell is reassembled to the frame. Excess wire generally should be avoided. I usually leave a little bit of extra if I misstrip or have a problem later on. No more than 1/4 of an inch in general is if you need a real rule of thumb, that might be a good rule of thumb to have. Kapton tape, I think, is the best adhesive tape available. Electrical tape, in general, should probably be avoided. As the inside of the locomotive warms up, there's a good chance that the tape and the adhesive on the tape migrates. The only exception to that I can think of might be 3M 33 tape. Was pretty good, but I'd still go with Kapton tape. It's expensive. Your first roll is going to break the bank, but past that, you'll probably have a lifetime supply. Heat shrink is very good for insulation, and it's very good for wire routing. It adheres very easily with cyanoacrylate glue. Super glue is very good for it. Automotive silicone RTV adhesives are good. Sealants and rubber cement, adhesives and sealants for the silicone. Rubber cement, cyanoacrylate, and goo are good adhesives that don't conduct electricity. A lot of times, if I have a joint, if a wire isn't long enough, or maybe I'm making a joint from magnet wire to stranded wire in a frame or on in the chassis or shell of the locomotive, I'll just dab a little bit of cyanoacrylate on that joint, and what the CA does is it acts as a good insulator. And if it's in a tight area, then I don't have to use Kapton tape or use heat shrink. It's a nice alternative. I think the hardest step for me in general in this is getting the shell off. I can probably get to the 6 wires in a matter of maybe 5 minutes, but it might take me half an hour to get the shell off a locomotive. The assembly, if you can get a hold of the assembly sheet, it might have a clue. It usually involves removing the couplers on either end of a diesel locomotive at the very least, and that's the easy part. You take the 2 screws out, pop the couplers off, and then some locomotives you have to squeeze, some you have to use toothpicks and barbecue skewers or popsicle sticks to jam in the sides to get the shell off. If you get really in a pinch, I found that in the forums or on Model Railroad Hobbyist website or not website, yeah, website. In their forums, there are people that ask occasionally how to get the shell off an Atlas or an Athearn or whatever proto locomotive, and there's generally help around. You're not the first person that's had trouble getting that shell off, I'm sure. Oh, be quiet. Excuse me. Okay, excuse me. Cutting and unsoldering. The best place to start when you're going at wires on the frame, I think, is to unsolder them. It's easy. If you happen to get the same length again, then it's already tinned and ready to go again. Or you can cut them to length at a later time. Connectors are, I feel, to cut them off close to the connector and then strip it and tin it later. One thing that the manufacturers find easy, and I'm sure the people putting the locomotives together in China like, because they don't have to solder, is the plastic clips. Plastic clips are okay. You're going back to metal to metal. I generally remove them with a flat blade screwdriver and solder the tin and solder the leads, and tin and solder the pads where the plastic clips made the pressure connection to the to a decoder that you're removing and upgrading. Reassembly is not bad as a job. Soldering the motor wires to the decoder, I usually leave the motor wires a little bit long and usually enter from the bottom of the board, depending upon the style of the board or the decoder. Attach the decoder next to the locomotive. Solder the track wires to the decoder. Attach the speaker wires. Attach the speaker to the frame, if possible. At that point, solder the speaker wires together. Attach the stay alive to the frame, if possible, and solder the stay alive wires to the decoder, and then test that installation. At that point, you've got the shell off, and it makes a good time to see which direction the locomotive is going. If you've got to re-solder the motor wires to make it go in the right direction, and just get an idea if the installation is going well at that point. The lighting would be the next thing. LEDs are lamps. Bulbs have 2 voltage ratings, 12 volt or 1.5 volt. They have a very finite lifetime. They generate heat themselves and they look realistic. They're large. One problem I bumped into last week, and I want to say this fairly loud, is that if you have 12 volt outputs from your locomotives, or from your decoders, which is most decoders, you're going to have to put a resistor in series with the bulb, and the resistor is going to get very hot. I hadn't realized how hot it gets. I'd heard stories that resistors got hot enough to melt spots in a frame or in a plastic shell. If you've got to use a bulb and it's coming out of a 12 volt source, then a half watt or even a 1 watt resistor that is bonded to the metal frame might, and I'd underline might, be the best way to do business, and then through the bulb and back. I'd be very careful of bulbs. A few accolades for LEDs now. They can easily be used with any voltage. They have a long life, no heat on the resistors. They can be bought now in realistic colors and come in many sizes. Just a quick aside, I remember an Athearn Blue Box that I put an NCE decoder in, and was very careful. I have a run-up box with resistors, got it to the brightness that I want, put it on the track, and it lasted for about 2 seconds. And that bulb is still in that same locomotive untouched, and it makes me grumble every time I see it. If LEDs had been available at that time, I'll bet it would still be running. Chinese make all the LEDs in the world now, I'm sure. LEDs are available in many sizes and colors. Come as components or pre-wired. Pre-wired LEDs have great wire in general. The wire is usually color-coded in red and black, and anything longer than a ½ inch I save and use in other places. It's just it's really fine wire. It holds up well when you're connecting the LED lights in the shell to your decoder, enough so that if I come out of an LED light with magnet wire on it, then I'll transition to the wire that comes on the LEDs, the stranded wire, from the magnet wire off the shell and on into the decoder, so that I have that flexibility. So if I have to take the shell off 3 times, on the 4th time I have to take it off. I'm not breaking magnet wire to get back into that shell again. The resistance calculation is easy. a lot of it's taken care of for you already from the decoders that are sold to you. A lot of sources for LEDs have decoders already attached. Have resistors already attached to them. El Mayo at Monster, LED Lighting House, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few. Evans Lighting Designs, all sell decoders. All sell LEDs with resistors attached, and they're all set up generally for 12 volts. The other way to do business is if you get a decoder buddy, you can use raw LEDs and go directly into the decoder buddy. The resistors are already present, and in some plug-and-play decoders, and the resistance is also set so that you can just wire the raw LEDs to the decoder. One thing that you'll want to watch out for is if you have LEDs with resistors and a decoder, or resistors in the decoder, you might not get enough current to light the LED. People have come back to me and said, "Hey, my lights don't light." Well, you've got too much resistance in line. You don't have enough current going through the wires to light an LED. Which gets to brightness. Brightness is very variable now with the decoder. It has the PWM functions, and on a slider in JMRI or in a slider in a loc programmer or whatever programmer you have, you can change the brightness of the decoder. It can also be generally varied by the resistance value. As resistance goes up, the brightness will go down. Just as some thoughts to go out to you, I wouldn't. I've had people use 750 ohm resistors or 750 ohms of resistance in line between a 12 volt source and an LED. That'll give you a very bright light. I think El Mayo uses 820 ohms. I think a lot of people use 1,000 ohms, and I think if you're going with Loc Sound, they use 2,200 ohms or 2.2K resistors. If you're going out to something like a ground light or a step light or maybe a number board light, and you want that initial dimming of the light, you could probably go all the way up to 4.7K and really dim that resistor down before you got to the PWM or the slider that you can use to change the brightness in your decoder. So there are a couple different ways to adjust the brightness in decoders. That's the resistance box I made way back when I was putting bulbs in ether and blue box locomotives. It's come in really handy. That's about the same range that I use for testing testing LEDs now. The one thing you do want to be careful of, once again, is getting too low in resistance. If you get 12 volts and down around 51 or 68 or 82 ohms resistance, you're going to have a good firecracker. It'll light up once really well, but you'll have trouble after that. The calculation for LEDs current is pretty straightforward. Just in general, you're going to have 12 to 13, maybe 14 volts coming out of your decoder. LEDs in general require 10 to 20 milliamps, so Mr. Ohm said that voltage equals current times resistance, or volts equals amps times ohms. So on the bottom equation, You got 12 volts divided by 20 or 20 milliamps or 0.02 amps gives about 600 ohms. So that's a maximum amount of current for the smallest resistor that you'd ever want to think of putting on an LED and being anywhere near conservative. Again, I'd start somewhere around up 750 ohms, and that'll cover you. That'll barely cover you. If you go up higher in resistance from there, you won't have anything to worry about. So, you know, what did I say there? Essentially, don't worry about that. If you have a decoder and you need a resistor, a 1K or a 2.2K resistor, 1,000 or 2.2 thousand ohm resistor at a quarter of a watt, and that's the way they're advertised on eBay or Amazon or wherever. That you're covered. Don't agonize over the calculations. That's essentially the same thing. I beat myself in the conversation. The 2.2 is fairly conservative. The higher the resistance, the longer the life of the LED. The lower the resistance, the brighter the light, but not necessarily the lifespan. Now that doesn't mean that you couldn't be 105 and run that locomotive at 600 ohms. From now until then, it'll burn out. That LEDs are very reliable and very long-lasting. I don't have any ideas of how long one will last. It's just, in general, the higher the resistance, the longer the life of the expected life of the LED. LEDs are polar. We said earlier that if you've installed one and it's not in the right direction, just turn it around, change one lead to the other side, or change both leads to the other side of the connection, and it'll probably light up for you. One thing I have found above and beyond that is there is a number of LEDs that will not light after you put them in series or parallel. They probably need more current, and what you can do to make it maybe work is reduce the resistance and try again. Estimate about a 1.5 volt drop across each LED and recalculate your formula. Or if you're like me, I'd much rather play with the LEDs. Experiment with it. If you want five of your favorite LEDs in series or parallel, do it, and then hitch it to a locomotive or a 12 volt or 13 volt output and see if it works. I bench test a lot of LEDs for people when I do custom resistors for installations, just to be sure. It's, you know, it doesn't take very long. It improves your soldering skills, and it covers me so that I don't have to get a locomotive out to a client and then have it come back because the lights don't work. It's easy to do when the shell is off and things are on the bench. This is an idea of the way I put LEDs in. You got your red wire, which is hot, coming in, the black wire going out of the LED, the red wire going into the next LED, and the black wire coming out. The red wire will go to the red, blue, and positive, and anode are all the same words. That's where the electrons come into the line, and the black wire is the cathode, and it'll go to the ground. And I think all decoders that it's the ground that has the switch on it, and the resistor can be on either side. This is some of that very fine and small wire that comes on the LEDs that I buy. What I happened to do on this locomotive was there are 0603 LEDs that I fit into the two headlights, and I paint the insides of the I can't say it now. The insides of the number boards with white, just a little bit of not very well shook white paint, so that it's more carrier than paint, just to diffuse that light a little bit more. And then I'll use 5730s, and that's the size of the LED in terms of inches for these, and I'll glue it on with a little bit of microcrystal clear or Formula 500 glue, and just then run another pair of wires out from here. After I have the wires and the you can see the 5730s are all covered up, I'll take some. I use black acrylic paint from Walmart. Just it's cheap, and I'll go over it maybe twice and make sure that I haven't got any light back leaking through. Some people use liquid electrical tape for this, but just to stop that light from shining through. This is an old, actually this is a newer Athearn yellow box, and they haven't quite got to the see-through grills yet. It's okay to let sound out through there, but I'm not into letting light out through those when you get that. This is an Atlas locomotive that I did, and this does have the see-through grills with the fans, and it shows you how I route wires, how I try to be neat in my installations. I've taken these wires come in from ditch lights, and the top wires are coming in from number boards and headlights, and just a little bit of Walther's glue in a dot will help hold those wires. And again, you can just grab onto that wire and pull it off. Here you can start to see I've used a little bit of clear heat shrink tubing to start routing the wires from the back end of the locomotive. This is just old telephone wire insulation that I'm using to route and hold those wires together. What I've done is I've taken all the positive blue plus or red wires and connected them to a header board. And what I'll do is I'll clip a positive wire to this, and that way, I'm going to go back a slide. All I have to do is connect the negative wire and look and see which light lit up, so I know which wire I want to put onto which auxiliary function. Solder it to which pad. So I have a method in terms of soldering it. This is a little bit of a rat's nest. This has 12 lighting outputs. This has 8 lighting outputs. Nice pads for your motor leads and your track leads and your speaker leads. And that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me, either through the website or it's www.nixtrains, Nixtrainz, hubdivision.com, and doesn't have to be about the Decoder Buddies. It can be about installations in general. I haven't done very many installations, but I have an idea about how they should be wired and how they should be done. Thank you for your time, and I hope your power's back and you're having a good day now.
Thank you very much, Nick. That was a very thorough presentation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Well, I guess that's the end of today's venue, unless someone else has something they want to say.
No.
Okie doke. Well, all right. Thank you very much. And I believe, as Kayla said, she's going to make sure that this gets put up on YouTube along with Randy's presentation, Randy Hamill, for the New Britain station presentation that he had put together. So want to wish you a good day and have a great rest of the weekend. Good night. Yeah, good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, Jim.
Goodbye.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.